Hello and welcome into the Beat Sessions. I'm your host, Mitchell Weary. Let's do this. Talk about this new album from Iris DeMent entitled Workin on a World. She released that on February 24th. This is her 7th studio album and her follow-up to 2015's The Trackless Woods. A cool record. All the lyrics from that song are actually poems written by Anna Akhmatova, and then Iris arranged the music around those. Pretty cool concept. I like her for her artistry, for her style of music as well. She's paying homage to Mahalia Jackson on this record, one of her heroes, an incredible gospel singer, someone who definitely deserves to be recognized because I don't think that she gets talked about really ever in the modern day by younger people especially. She's one of those artists that, given the influence of gospel in so much music, it's hard to ignore her, and it's really cool that Iris has given her a shout out. The feel of this record is absolutely wonderful. I love her style, the Americana influence, and the way that, on this record especially too, I'm feeling a lot of R&B and just a lot of soul, and I like that influence over the Americana. A little bit of country, a little bit of folk. It really is a cool blend. It reminds me a lot of Van Morrison and what he's done throughout his career. And I couldn't help but laugh a little bit because, being kind of a political album, I'm kind of just likening this to the Liberal latest record project, Volume 1. Not that Workin on a World is nearly as bloated and nearly as obnoxious. But what I will say is that Iris makes the one mistake that I just think you cannot make as a musician, and she picks a party. She chooses to pay homage to a number of democratic figures, and at that point it's kind of like, you've really defeated the purpose what I think folk music provides, and that's introspection through character studies. And just Bob Dylan is the easy example of someone who who's made the mistake in his life as well. But I mean, you write as many albums and as many songs as he has, it's bound to happen at some point. You're bound to get a little fire under your belt or whatever. But the point is that if you choose to align yourself with those figures, now all of a sudden you've erased the identity of a folk song and creating a character study, creating an individual that you can put into a scenario and study their response. You dictate how that character's fate goes down and the lessons that can be learned through that. And objectively, anybody from any political angle can look at a character study and look at a story, and if it's done well enough, the themes that are there will resonate universally. And Iris has always done a magnificent job of doing that in her music. And there's a lot of that going on this record, and I really enjoyed those moments. But then there's moments like going down to Singing Texas. And this song, again, like 90% of what she's running down on this track, I agree with, and I think she's absolutely right about. And it's cool to to have her back and to have her perspective, because I think she is a very smart, insightful person and a great artist. But I really got to say, picking on Texas, this whole thing starts off with, I'm going down to Singing Texas where anybody can carry a gun, but we'll all be so much safer there, the biggest lie under the sun. I know that this is a really hot issue. It's something that I really don't want to dive super deep into, because I don't think it's important to the discussion here. What I do think is important is, picking on Texas, which it seems very arbitrary. Towards the end of the song, she does pick on Arkansas, her home state, and Michigan as well. You could have easily picked on Arizona. There's gun laws here are very liberal. There's a number of other states where you have the liberalism there. And I won't get into my politics on that. I think it's a different issue, but in my head, I'm like, why just choose to pick on Texas? Especially, I'd argue, a state where artists and music, people from all walks of life, as far as their artistry, are celebrated there. You think of Austin City Limits, you think of all the magnificent musical events that go down in that state. 192,000 full-time employees, from the report that just came out from Governor Greg Abbott, generates like $9 billion. The industry of music did last year in the state of Texas. It's amazing, the state's commitment to its artist. And so it seems just kind of like a cheap jab. And I'm like, you cannot honestly go to expect like go to Texas and expect to perform this song and have people be happy about it, because it's just like, in my opinion, I'm just the arbitrary nature of it is not sitting well with me. The other thing that she does on this song, and where she picks a side, I just want to say thank you to those brave women in the squad. She says every day their lives are jeopardized by the hate mongers and this mob. You could say that about anybody in the House of Representatives, frankly. And if you want to run your mouth on social media as much as AOC does, the same goes for Marjorie Taylor Greene. And I'm going to pick on both sides here because both sides deserve to be picked on. That's why rock and roll artists shouldn't do this. They shouldn't do this to their music. I want to pull up a cool little book here. This is a book called The Proud Tower by a historian named Barbara Tuchman. One of my favorites. I think the passion with which she illustrates history. If you've never read The Guns of August, there's a story about how it took her. The last part of that book that she wrote was the introduction, and I think it took her like a month to write that intro. But you read the introduction of that book, and it reads like it took a month to write. There's just almost like a painful amount of thought that you can tell was put into that opening couple of paragraphs that it just sets her apart. There's no one like her. And in this particular book, The Proud Tower is about the zeitgeist leading into World War I. And this particular essay, End of a Dream, focuses on American politics. And she talks about a gentleman named Thomas B. Reed, who is arguably the most respectable figure in American politics for his example and for ultimately what went down with him. And I won't get into that. I'll leave you to read this essay and to read about Thomas B. Reed, because I think he's fascinating and I think he's worth taking the time to discover. But she highlights him because he comes from fairly good stock, New England blood. And the point that she brings up, and I'm going to be a little long-winded here. I'm just going to ring this. Yet among those who were his chosen friends, okay, here we go. It was complimenting. Here we go. He was Thomas B. Reed, Republican of Maine, age 50, already acknowledged after 14 years in Congress as the ablest running debater the American people ever saw. He would, before the end of session, be called the greatest parliamentary leader of his time, far and away the most brilliant figure in American politics. Although his roots went back to the beginning of New England, Reed was not nurtured for a political career by inherited wealth, social position, or landed estate. Politics in America made no use of these qualities, and men who possessed them were not in politics. Well-to-do, long-established families did not shoulder, but shunned the responsibilities of government. This is something that is at the core of the foundation of our country, the way that people came over here and usurped the land from the people that were here, and it was just a free-for-all and a land grab. And by the time it goes on, the abdication of the rich was born out of the success of the American Revolution and the defeat of Hamilton's design to organize the state in the interest of governing class. Jefferson's principles and Jackson's democracy had won. The founding fathers and signers of the Declaration had been in the majority men of property and position, but the very success of their accomplishment ended by discouraging men of their own kind to participate in government. With the establishment of universal manhood suffrage, men of property found themselves counting for no more at the polls than the common man. Being far outnumbered, they retired from combat. No president after the first six came from a well-established family, unless the Harrisons could be considered to qualify. It's fascinating because I think a massive part of what we call the American dream is the idea that anybody can come up and become the president. It's fascinating. And you talk about the squad, you look at all those figures, and I look especially at, Ilhan Omar, who you talk about a Muslim woman who comes from Mogadishu, Somalia, and now she's in America representing her people. I mean, if that's not what the American dream is all about, in my opinion, I don't know what is. Her politics aside, I think her story, coming from where she came from and where she is now, is amazing, and it's fascinating, and I think it's something that should be pointed out and used to drive people, to show them that if you really want to, just don't let anything stand in your way, and if you keep fighting, you will get there. But this is a really interesting article. She goes on to say that the most valuable, most moderate, able, and cultivated part of the population, wrote Ralph Waldo Emerson in his essay on politics, is the timid and merely defense The most valuable and most moderate, able, and cultivated part of the population is timid and merely defensive of property. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote that. And it goes on. I'll read just a little more. Without land to hold on to, a hereditary governing class had failed to develop in America. And this is the most important part of the essay. And the absence of such a class bound by a traditional morality left America open to the unrestricted exploits of the plunderers, the builders, the malefactors, the profiteers, and through them to the corruption of politics. And this is what is wrong with our government and with our politics, and why they are so corrupt, and why there's probably no fixing it, no turning it around, sadly. It's the dichotomy of the American dream, the idea that anybody can go there, but what qualifies someone to be president of the United States? What qualifies someone to be in any position in government, frankly? And it's a very subjective thing that we could all sit here and argue about for forever if we wanted to. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that Iris picked a side, much like Van Morrison picked a side on latest record project. Very much aligned himself. He said a lot of things on that record that I truly agree with, but he aligned himself ultimately with Republicans, which is weird because he's an Irish dude in Northern Ireland. And I don't know why he'd, choose to side in the American political spectrum on a record. But Iris has done that on this record. She's waved the blue flag. And I think it's just not a smart thing to do. I think that, checking a box doesn't give you moral leverage. And that is something that's become a really big problem on both sides in this country. And very frustrating too. The two-party system is, and why I'm bringing this up is because I don't think, based on what we just read here from Barbara Tuchman, I don't think that American politicians in any right should be celebrated. I will say that she celebrates John Lewis on this record, who, very much like Thomas B. Reed, I would say, for everything that he did for civil rights, I think more than anything, he should be remembered for the way that he honestly and continually over decades represented his constituency in his community with dignity and with purpose and without ever selling himself out. He really is one of those other unique figures in American politics that never sold out his integrity. And he's another person that, a rare example, but honoring him on this record, I think that's really, really cool of her to do. Iris is, insight to his role in American politics and what he's done, or what he did in his life, I should say, is something that is, in my opinion, I think worth celebrating. To get to the point though, we were talking about the two parties in America, and they love that. And I'm so tired of listening to, I've heard this argument so many times over the years. Oh, the two-party system's the only way that we can do this thing. Like, no other party can establish legitimacy. And if you keep rolling with that argument, then we're going to keep electing people that, I want to bring up this quote from Richard Pryor. He talks about greedy people. And he talks about, they are the problem, and all these other things that distract us as far as the prejudices in the world. Granted, hate is a problem, but hate is there and it's put in there by the greedy people, Richard Pryor argues. If we're all busy fighting, we don't take the time to, extend the olive branch and have a chat and realize hey, we have more in common than we thought. And it's these assholes that we all put on pedestals and send to the White House that really are the problem. And the only way that you get into power, he says, is by acting like the people in power. And it's the easiest to do that within a two-party system. Those two parties, they don't have to deal with offshoots. They don't have to deal with, multi-party systems within, let's just say, the British government, where you have coalitions. It's honestly, it's something that I've always argued for. I think it makes total sense when you talk about, especially a country as large as America, all the different represented interests in our government. And yeah, there's going to be pockets of Democrats, pockets of Republicans that probably identify and are able to reach across the aisle and work on certain legislation if things were constructed this way. I look at the Squad, for example, and their politics. It's not that I disagree with their goals. I disagree with the way they want to go about implementing things in a lot of ways, but more than anything, they're an offshoot of the Democrats that I don't think anybody's really ever going to have to worry about, because there's just 9 of them. And, if there was another faction and another faction, maybe they wanted to split off and make a coalition with this team, but they've developed their politics in a way that I think is just so far left for so many people that really are wanting to, reach across the aisle and work with us. And I think that's the thing that's off-putting to a lot of people, is that AOC especially, her social media, all these things, it seems, and I'll say the same thing about Marjorie Taylor Greene, they don't seem like they want to work across the aisle. There doesn't seem to be any effort there, because the more you're able to just shout and stir up a storm on social media, the more likes you're going to get, the more people are going to follow you. Those two figures, very obviously it's about them and not about representing their people. And I find that frustrating. And I just don't think they deserve the pedestal, that platform to be on. And in this two-party system, and what we've seen a lot too, Dave Chappelle talks about this, and I love this. He talks about the idea of good and bad being replaced with the idea of better and worse. And unfortunately, politics is this area where, given those two parties, and those are our options, basically. That's how most people see it anyway. You have two options, and most people view it as that good and bad. Fundamentally, you have to look at it as that better and worse, which is, it's the reverse when you look at politics. And I think that that's where people are getting mixed up with their politics and where their politics are bad. I think that knowing something about candidate X and then knowing something about candidate Y and having to weigh those options and ultimately just check a box when there isn't candidate C, D, E, F, G, and so on is frustrating, and it's the easiest way for them to keep us divided. And so this concept of better or worse, I think, has trickled from the polling station into our daily lives. And that's unfortunate, because I think that, those moments in the polling station, it's good to have conversations. It's good to have dialogue and to discuss issues. But ultimately, I have so many friends that we disagree on things and we'll never see eye to eye on those things. And we're always going to go to the election box and vote differently on those things. And that's okay. We continue to have discussions because life changes and circumstances change things. And maybe one day something happens where that discussion comes up and, there is a change of heart. I think that it's important to maintain civility and to keep that dialogue open, which is something that people don't do either, for that reason. So this has been a little long-winded, and it's unfortunate. The idea of better for worse, you get these people that it's a shifting goalpost. So, better for worse, if you're just, doing something bad, or, even worse than bad, does that really count for anything? I think all of us fundamentally know what good is, and we know what bad is. And what I like about Dave Chappelle is he uses this illustration of life being the maze. And the person that operates on better for worse is the person running through the maze just trying to find the cheese. And he says the person that operates on good and bad is the person that identifies that they're in a maze. And I think that that's a really just a phenomenal statement and a phenomenal idea. It resonates with me a ton. And it's unfortunate, as much as I love the music on this record. It kicks off with Workin' on a World, the title track. It's got this gentle piano, gives way to a light, groovy country feel, folk, Americana. We're all working on a world we'll never see. I love that sentiment. And this is where I think this is the kind of thing that I think makes for really good folk music, is this universal idea of no matter who you are and what you believe, you're working to maintain and conserve what we have around us for future generations so that they can enjoy it just as much as we are. And there's a lot of people I feel like that operate on that level of, well, I'll be dead, so it doesn't matter. And I think that is just such a toxic mindset. And I love this song just immediately coming out of the gate and fighting against that mindset. I think it's destructive. And I think that, especially it's just amazing how many people have children and they choose to operate like that. It blows my mind. But I like her. I like the statement of the song. I love where it's working, where it's placed it on the record, and unfortunately, it leads into that second track going down to "Sing in Texas," which ultimately has got a lot of good things going on. It's got this rolling barroom piano. The percussion is super light. This organ enters. It's got this like Dylan-esque kind of like groove and this journey that it goes along. And there's a lot of great things that she says in that song, but she makes a few moves that some might, mark them as bold. I say 20 years down the road, I don't think that these people deserve to have the respect on record that she's giving them. Just my personal opinion. Say a Good Word is your third song. Classic piano style ballad. I love the pop and jazz feel of this song. Kind of stands out for that particular reason. An eye for an eye leaves a whole world blind. Another great lyric, another great statement. As far as I'm a very, very peaceful man. Violence sucks. I've only been in a couple fights in my life, and I hated every moment of that. It's not something I like to do. I don't think that there's a need for physical violence when we have our words, when we have our ideas, and those can be conveyed and expressed. And I think more than anything, it's about maintaining your equanimity and checking your emotions, which is a tough thing to do. I got this Irish temperament. It took decades for me to mellow my mood and to chill the hell out, especially because I used to drink a lot in my 20s, and that was just not good. And talking about skeletons in closets, like I don't even mind saying this shit, because it's like if this channel does blow up at some point, there could be all these people that, like poor Mark Wahlberg, dig back 35 years ago, and they want to sit and like rag on him for presenting an award to some Asian filmmakers for a great film that they made. And the first thing that people say and that they see is, oh wow, like he beat up an Asian guy, now you're going to do this. And it's like, man, that was 35 years ago when he was 16 and probably cranked off his lid on whatever drugs. And it's like, man, if that's your attitude and if that's how you want to look at people in the world, like that there's no room for retribution for people to grow and to learn from their mistakes whatsoever. Like, I mean, that might as well just be a death sentence in my opinion. Just, throw the noose around someone's neck. If you're really going to call them out after apologies were made, after efforts were made on Wahlberg's side to reach out and to show compassion, to say that he was wrong, that he is sorry, that this experience taught him this and this and this, and that while that's valuable, I'm sorry that you had to be the victim of my actions for me to get there. It's just mind blowing. Like, I would love to just put like all these people that made those comments, like, let's go find all the people that knew them when they were 16 and just freaking put them on blast. Like, for real, if we're all going to be judged on our 16-year-old selves at the end of the day, like that's going to be the high stock of our character, then like, what the hell are we doing? For real. It's so frustrating. I love that sentiment though. An eye for an eye leaves the whole world blind. The Sacred Now, your fourth song, acoustic driven. It's got this like kind of this desert rock feel. Reminded me a bit of like Neil Young and Crazy Horse. I like that about it. Enjoy the sentiment of this track as well. It's another well-written song that leads right into I Won't Ask You Why. Gentle piano-driven ballad on this, acoustic guitar, complimentary slide on this, and a very sad story on this particular track, but in that folk tradition. That's the kind of stuff that she's always done so well, and the type of thing that, I'm looking at this album, 13 songs, the runtime's a little over an hour, talking about going down to Sing in Texas. Maybe release it as a single if you want to make that statement, if you want to be bold, but it takes up the better part of 8 minutes on a record that, is really solid for the most part. And I just cannot help but feel like that song is just cheap filler. It's really what it feels like. For this record and for so many songs that are so poetic and they're so well written, that track feels like very low hanging fruit. Warriors of Love, bright upbeat piano, driven alt folk country feel, celebrating John Lewis. And she celebrates Rachel Corrie, who young activist who I believe in 2003 lost her life in the Middle East. I believe she was in the West Bank when she was rolled over by a tank. She was out there protesting. I mean, why you're going to throw him or throw her into a song with John Lewis is beyond me. I don't really think that those are two figures that deserve the same talking points necessarily. I remember being in college when that went down, and there being this big old thing about being like, don't go over there to protest because you just saw what happened. I mean, for real, I think if anything that, people want to put her on a pedestal, but there was very much a sentiment of like, you talk about white privilege and talk about American privilege and people thinking that they can just go anywhere they want and throw their agenda down and people will respect it and listen to you. It's like, man, you're so lucky to be born in America and to have the privilege to just wake up here every day and operate. I don't want anybody to get crushed by a tank ever. I think it's really very sad what happened to her. And sadly, the investigation, a lot argued that it was very arbitrary. That's another political thing that it's a very gray area that like, I don't even want to begin to step into. I'm a little surprised that, and I don't have an opinion on this, but as far as, the Israeli-Palestinian issue is a big one right now, and Iris seems to have taken the Palestinian side, and that's a bold move. That's all I'll say about that. It's a big, bold move. It's one that I won't necessarily agree or disagree with. I don't put that in line with, with the issue of highlighting political representatives for the reasons that I just pointed out and for the text that I just read. Let Me Be Your Jesus is your 7th track. Rolling piano. It's got this like funny kind of raspy vocal, very Dylan-esque. I love the way that it's executed. I love the criticism of safe spaces in this particular song. I think her assessment of just what life is like and what you need to prepare to cope with it is solid. And the horns that work in, really just a nice atmosphere that those create. It's one of the things that I love best about her music is that bit of soul, that bit of R&B that's working into her Americana. The Cherry Orchard, beautiful piano ballad. I really like this song. The storytelling is spot on. Vocal melodies are just absolutely incredible. Got this, great little guitar in the background that just kind of reminds me of, like an Italian restaurant. And it's a fine example of when she's, really doing what she does best, in my opinion. Nothing for the Dead is your 9th song. Great blend of country and soul. Big gospel drive on this track as well. Mahalia is your 10th song. Mahalia Jackson is the song that's referring to. It's got this just a great gospel-driven piano ballad, as it should be. Arguably the most influential gospel singer of all time, with the way that she brought music to the church. It's really cool to read about her, and just an incredible life, an incredible woman that definitely deserves to be highlighted on this record. I love that. I love the slide guitar that works in, like, just some nice textures that give this song a little oomph. How Long is your 11th track. More of that piano-driven country folk feel. Gospel organ. It's got great bounce and groove to it. Third verse, is nicely done on this track. I really like the third verse of the song. Walkin' Daddy, your penultimate track. Piano driven. It's got this bluesy barroom feel. I love the guitars that work in. It's got this like slow meandering percussion. The song is fire. It's a really great penultimate track. Ain't no good road till it's free to everybody. Hell yeah. Can't echo that sentiment more. I agree with that 100%. And there's so much about this record to love. Leading into Waycross, Georgia, your final track, another pretty blend of Americana and soul. To wrap this thing up, it's unfortunately I don't think it's out on vinyl. I don't think that Iris pressed it. At an hour and 3 minutes, it's going to be on a double LP. Who knows what the cost would be? Probably be in that $40 range. I'd probably have to pass on it. Just with that second song, Going Down to Singing Texas, just it's kind of unfortunate. when an artist chooses to make that bold move. There's a ton of these songs that I will continue to stream and to listen to and to enjoy, but that's not a song that I'm ever gonna feel riveted by and ever feel a jolt of excitement when it comes on. And it's not a track that I'm like gonna want to enjoy listening to, frankly. It's and it's the second track on the record. It's kind of a bummer, but I think all these other songs are really solid. It feels a little long-winded, a little drawn out after 11 years. It's nice to have a nice chunk of material. So I'll argue in her favor for that as far as the double LP and giving us this big record. But yeah, I think I'm really interested to hear what you all have to say about that second track. What are your thoughts? Please keep it civil. I don't want this to become a punching match. We're here to discuss music. We're here to create open civil dialogue. And oftentimes that involves incorporating politics because, as we've seen here, this is a very politically driven album in a lot of ways. But ultimately, if it does hit the wax, I'm probably going to pass on this thing. It's unfortunate, but I passed on Van Morrison's latest record project for the same reason. A lot of great music, but a lot more nonsense on that record. I will say that had to be sorted through. And as a listener, as someone who really, like, fundamentally, when I throw a record down, I have to be able to just drop the needle twice, and that's it. Drop it, flip it, drop it, and that's it. And if I can't do that, then it's not going in the shelf. So I hope you enjoyed this record. There's a lot to enjoy, for real. Hope you find this review helpful as well. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel. Do all the things to help Keith, MB, and I blow this project up in 2023. Tune into the live show on Tuesday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Stay tuned throughout the week for more album reviews. We will see you next time on The Beat Sessions.